Big guns come out in support of Carrie Lam's CE bid.
Obviously, Hong Kong is a very politically complicated place, and this job has been a very politically complicated job.
Peter Matheson speaks out over surprise Hong Kong U departure.
Well, it depends on your definition of cordial. I'm quoting his spokesman as saying it was cordial. I would say it was frank, and as it always should be.
And all that fuss about a phone call between the leaders of America and Australia.
Good evening. Chief Executive hopeful Carrie Lam held a massive campaign rally in Wan Chai today. Some of Hong Kong's movers and shakers attended the event, but a number of election committee members stressed they still haven't decided who they would nominate to become the city's next leader. Winna Wong has more on that and the campaigns by other CE hopefuls.
It was Carrie Lam's first major campaign rally since the race for the city's top job began. Lam gave a speech about her life, starting from her days as head girl in secondary school. Her son was also there to show support. Lam ended by promising she will focus on housing, education, and the economy if she becomes the city's leader. Guests arriving at the convention and exhibition center had been standing in line to get inside the venue and were greeted by Lam herself. Some declared their full support for the CE hopeful.
I think she's the best candidate at the moment. The thing that worried me about John, it took a long time for him to get a release from Beijing. And so I'm not sure of what the relationship is.
We just feel her as a good candidate. She spent a lot of time for livelihood in the past, but when we have a discussion with her this time, she told us that we'll pay more attention to the economy of Hong Kong.
The Chinese General Chamber of Commerce has said it will bundle its 18 ballots for Lam. There were many big names at today's rally, but one important thing to note is that many election committee members who showed up said their presence does not necessarily mean they will nominate Carrie Lam. Local National People's Congress delegate Maria Tam said while she thinks Lam is a suitable candidate, she may not nominate anyone in the end. As for the pro-establishment party, the Democratic Alliance for the Betterment and Progress of Hong Kong,
the Central Committee of DAB have not yet come to any decision. It depends on the outcome of our meeting.
As for John Tsang, he launched a crowdfunding page to raise money for his election campaign. His team said heavy traffic meant the page couldn't be accessed at one point.
It's very important to show people's support in some way, but at the same time, I hope this is not just something futile. I hope this is a substantive contribution to my campaign.
And he's won another supporter, former Secretary of Development Mak Chai Kwong. Regina Ip also kept herself busy today in lobbying for support. She met with members of the accountancy sector and later visited the Professional Teachers Union. Winna Wong, TVB News.
Chief Executive hopefuls also appealed for support today from the Hung Ye Cook. They attended the rural body's annual spring reception. The Cook holds 27 election committee votes. Rachel Lung with that story.
The first to arrive was John Tsang. He was followed by two of his rivals, Carrie Lam and Regina Ip. Another CE hopeful, Wu Kwok King, declined the Cook's invitation to attend today's event. A number of officials were also there, such as Acting Chief Executive Matthew Cheung and the head of the central government's liaison office, Zhang Xiaoming. The powerful rural body earlier said it was leaning towards bundling all of its votes for a single CE candidate. Today, the chairman of the Cook, Kenneth Lau, made clear the CE contenders must protect the traditional rights of indigenous villagers. They must also uphold the basic law. Ip is confident that she meets the requirements.
It appears that they might shift their position. I don't think we should assume that they will give all their votes to only one candidate. I'm confident about getting at least some of them.
The rural chief insists no final decision has been made yet on the CE nomination.
Most of us still inclined to vote for Mr. Lam.
So there's no way that you guys will vote for separate candidates?
It's not concluded yet. We wait and see each of the candidates. And I think we want to have an open and fair competition for each other.
After the event, Zheng and Lam left without answering the media's questions. Members of the rural body will meet again in a monthly meeting scheduled for the 21st of this month. They will then discuss and make a final decision on who to nominate. Rachel Leung, TVB News.
In other local news, the Vice Chancellor of the University of Hong Kong insists he's leaving the school because of personal reasons, not Hong Kong's political situation. Peter Matheson's comments came after he announced his resignation yesterday. Elmi Leung reports.
Matheson tried to keep things light as he faced the media today, one day after his shock announcement.
So I feel like I'm a lecturer and you've come to my class, so welcome.
The Vice-Chancellor was asked if Hong Kong's polarising political situation was the reason why he would not complete his 5-year term.
Obviously, Hong Kong is a very politically complicated place, and this job has been a very politically complicated job. I've enjoyed that aspect of the job. I like complexity, and I've done my best to always just stick to what I believe to be in the best interests of the universities.
Matheson said he spent months deciding whether to join the University of Edinburgh after being approached by headhunters. He also elaborated on why he is sorry and somewhat surprised to leave his Hong Kong post.
I'm surprised at myself. It's not typical of me to leave before a job is finished. I do feel a sense of loyalty to the students and staff and alumni of Hong Kong U, and I'm sorry that I'm disappointing them by leaving.
He explained one of his personal reasons for returning to the UK, even though he would be taking a substantial pay cut.
Edinburgh, you may not know, is my father's hometown, and I think that my father would have been proud to see his son as the principal of the University of Edinburgh. So for me, there's a very sentimental attachment to Edinburgh.
Asked if Arthur Lee, who heads the school's governing body, persuaded him to stay, the Vice-Chancellor said there was no such discussion because he'd already made up his mind to leave. Matheson won't be leaving Hong Kong U until January 2018. He did offer a tip to his successor today.
Tell him to smile at the media.
Elmi Leung, TVB News.
Thank you all very much.
Overseas now, and the new U.S. Defense Secretary is reassuring Japanese leaders that President Donald Trump is fully committed to defending Japan as a treaty partner. Jim Mattis spoke at the start of a meeting with Prime Minister Shinzo Abe. Mattis is on his first trip since taking over the Pentagon. He said provocations from North Korea left no room for doubt about U.S. commitment, a message he also delivered earlier in South Korea. During his presidential campaign, Trump said the security partnership with Tokyo was a bad deal for the U.S. Meanwhile, North Korea has dismissed its Minister of State Security. Kim Won-hong was removed from the top spy agency, apparently on charges of corruption, abuse of power, and human rights abuses. He was considered a key aide to leader Kim Jong-un. Officials are trying to ratchet down tensions days after a testy phone call between U.S. President Donald Trump and Australian Prime Minister Malcolm Turnbull. The brief conversation led to a diplomatic spat that put the future of a refugee deal between the two nations in doubt. James Aiken reports.
The agreement was a source of friction during the phone call that ended much earlier than scheduled.
His spokesman, his official
Today, Turnbull said it was absolutely untrue that Trump hung up on him, and he insisted an Obama administration refugee deal with his country still stands.
He's been very critical of the deal that President Obama did, and he clearly wouldn't have done it himself, but we have persuaded him to stick with it nonetheless.
Under the deal, the U.S. agreed to resettle refugees from a group of several hundred asylum seekers, most of whom are on camps on 2 Pacific islands. In return, Australia will take refugees from Central America. Yesterday, U.S. officials begrudgingly suggested the agreement will continue, but they said any refugees who come to the U.S. will undergo extreme vetting without elaborating. The White House is trying to clean up the diplomatic mess.
The president is unbelievably disappointed in the previous administration's deal that was made and how poorly it was crafted and the threat to national security it put the United States on.
Trump's critics, meanwhile, continue to take jabs at his immigration policy, some from his own Republican Party.
I think the president should sleep more and tweet less. If politics is music, the president was off-key.
Meanwhile, the American Civil Liberties Union has launched the latest in a string of legal actions challenging Trump's executive order.
And said that if the government...
A proposed class action lawsuit says the travel ban announced last week unfairly targets nationals from 7 Muslim-majority countries living in the U.S. And Angelina Jolie is the latest celebrity to slam the Trump ban. In a New York Times opinion piece, Jolie said that discriminating based on religion is playing with fire. She said the nation's security decisions should be based on facts, not fear. James Aiken, TVB News.
Big changes coming from the European Union. The EU has vowed to stem the flow of illegal migrants by shutting down the deadliest sea route from Libya to Italy. The goal is to save lives and stop human trafficking.
Italian Coast Guard, we come to save you.
In 2016, more than 180,000 migrants and refugees found their way to Europe through the central Mediterranean route. But it's the deadliest voyage, according to experts who confirm more than 4,500 migrants perish using the sea route linking Libya to Italy. The decision to seal off the route to human smugglers was hatched after Libya's prime minister held meetings in Brussels with top European Union officials. The European Council president says they've done it before and the plan works.
Europe has proved it is able to close down irregular routes of migration, as we did on the Eastern Mediterranean route. We have discussed this example of our cooperation with Turkey and other countries in this part of our region. Now it is time to close down the route from Libya to Italy.
At today's EU summit in Malta, members are crafting a plan that calls for stepping up the training of Tripoli's Coast Guard. They would also offer more money and aid to Libya and other African countries, which would seal their borders so migrants seeking better lives in Europe do not get through. Knowing the EU foreign policy chief criticized U.S. President Donald Trump's extreme vetting policy, reporters asked her to explain how the EU migration agreement differs.
So the European approach is this: human rights, saving lives, managing the flow with UN agencies. So I guess there are some differences there. Thank you. Bye.
EU leaders also plan to discuss the bloc's future when they mark its 60th anniversary in Rome in March. The March summit will take place in Rome for historic reasons. The Treaty of Rome was signed in the Italian capital in 1957, giving birth to the European Economic Community.
Still ahead in our newscast. Town Planning Board approves Fanling housing plan. No end in sight to retail sales slump. And bad news for the Tiger on his comeback trail.